Trump says Putin has gone absolutely crazy and warns Russia will collapse if Ukraine falls. Slams Russia and weighs in on possible sanctions, and Turkey's top diplomat heads for Russia to discuss Ukraine. We will talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member, Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Alexandra, US President Donald Trump stated that Kremlin dictator Vladimir Putin has gone absolutely crazy. He added that if Putin attempts to seize the entire Ukraine, then Russia will face collapse, according to his post on the social media platform Truth Social. Trump's statements came after Russia had been launching massive drone and missile attacks on Ukraine for several days. In your opinion, does Trump fear that a total Russian defeat could unleash consequences that the West is strategically unprepared for? What does Donald Trump mean by suggesting that Russia will collapse if Putin attempts to seize all of Ukraine?
Well, first of all, we are seeing that Donald Trump is obviously not happy, to say the least, on what he's seeing. And a few days ago, he said that he doesn't know what happened to Putin. He's not happy with what Putin is doing. Putin is killing a lot of people. He said that just before posting this on Truth Social. And we really see that Donald Trump lashed out after Russia attacked Ukraine again and again and again, and attacked civilians again and again and again, with the largest aerial assault on Ukraine, on the country, since the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And Donald Trump, first, he posted that he knows Vladimir Putin well. He had a very good relationship with Vladimir Putin, but something happened to him. Something changed. This means, first of all, this tells me that maybe something can happen to their relationship. Something can happen to Donald Trump and Donald Trump's reaction to what Russia is doing. And really, we are finally seeing that Donald Trump maybe will listen to his own intelligence, saying that Russian forces are not going to stop. Nothing tells American intelligence that Russia wants to stop or plans to stop after all those massive barrage of Ukrainian cities. And it's what we've been seeing for many days now. And I think may have the record of those attacks right now on Ukrainian civil cities, and including the capital, including Kyiv. And Donald Trump's message, the message that is unexpected right now, and the message that we did not expect to see or hear from President Trump, that this will be the downfall of Russia. This will lead to the downfall of Russia. This might mean a few things, more than just more military aid to Ukraine with the help of the minerals deal. Because what we've been hearing from, for example, Marco Rubio, the state secretary, that the minerals deal is in full swing. According to the minerals deal, there are weapons that are being sent to Ukraine. But maybe there is going to be something more than a minerals deal, because as we've been hearing from President Trump, that he will choose the way he will act. This is, again, we've heard that from State Secretary, from Marco Rubio. When Marco Rubio was in Congress, when he made his statements in Congress, and he made his statements in his own, previously they were his peers, but to his friends, mainly in the Senate, with whom he worked for many years, he said that he does not support the Sanctions Act, the Sanctioning Russia Act, to be precise. But there are no indication that the old sanctions, the sanctions of the Biden administration, are going to be canceled by President Trump, and President Trump will soon decide how will he act. He does not fully support the Sanctioning Russia Act, but he will decide how will he act. These are the words by State Secretary. So now we are seeing this process of choosing how to act. We've heard of that memorandum that the Russian side is supposed to give to the Ukrainian side, and after the Russian side gives this memorandum, now finally the American side will understand how things are going, what is going on, etc., etc. We've heard all that, but maybe even without the memorandum, even without that text, Trump will change the way he sees, let's say, the Russian attack of Ukraine, or maybe he will change the way the United States act in that. So maybe this will be more than just weapons according to the minerals deal. Maybe this will be, again, new sanctions, not only from the Senate, not only from Congress, but from the White House. Maybe this will mean that the White House doesn't need that memorandum. It doesn't need to see that memorandum because, again, actions speak louder than words. As many officials of the Trump administration said, they want to see how Russia acts. This is exactly what they are seeing. This is how Russia acts. Russia attacks civilians. Russia attacks cities. Russia continues to launch attack after an attack. And that's what Russia is doing. This really speaks louder than words. All those words in the memorandum, they mean nothing without the stop of the war, without the moment when Russian officials say that now we need to at least pause these attacks. And we're seeing just more of them. So this, to me, this says that maybe finally President Trump will listen, first of all, to his own intelligence that's been saying that there are no signs that Russia plans to stop. And maybe they won't need this memorandum. They won't need the memorandum that Lavrov promised Marco Rubio to send, this memorandum, this plan to end the conflict, as they say, the special military operation, as they say. Now maybe they won't need this memorandum because if Donald Trump not just says, but writes, this will lead to the downfall of Russia, that tells me much more than any interview, for example, that President Trump could give, because he posted it. He posted it on his own social network. And this probably means that President Trump is now seeing things way more different than just a week ago.
And we also need to understand that this Russian memorandum is just another piece of Russian propaganda. And also, besides criticizing Putin, Trump also aimed at Ukrainian's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. He claimed that Zelensky's words allegedly caused problems. U.S. President emphasized. Likewise, President Zelenskyy is doing his country no favors by talking the way he does. Everything out of his mouth causes problems. I don't like it, and it better stop. What specific statements or actions by President Zelenskyy is Donald Trump referring to, and how might they allegedly cause problems in the context of U.S. foreign policy? This is meant more as a rhetorical question than a request for a direct answer, but your own opinion.
Well, I think President Trump just doesn't like being criticized, especially when someone else who criticizes Trump is obviously correct, is obviously right. As we know, as we've seen in The Art of the Deal, the book by President Trump, and it was partially portrayed in the movie The Apprentice, we know that one of rules of President Trump, his own personal rules, is to never admit defeat and never admit that he is wrong in any way. So President Zelenskyy just recently wrote on Telegram that the silence of the United States States, the silence of others in the world only encourages Putin. Every such terrorist Russian strike is reason enough for new sanctions against Russia. Of course, these are words that for us are obvious. I think that, yes, the silence only encourages Putin. And as the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine said, this is not peace, this is appeasement. And we've all seen what appeasement does. And in the history of Europe also, we've seen what appeasement of the aggressor does. So President Zelenskyy even doesn't allege that there are parallels, for example, with the Second World War. He just says that the silence encourages Putin to act for new terrorist attacks on Ukraine. So I think this is what not angered, but at least this is what President Trump, that's painful for him to see. That's painful for him to read, because this is obvious. And we are seeing that President Zelenskyy is absolutely right. And this is exactly what is happening. President Trump is so nice to President Putin. He's so sweet. He's so great. He's talking about his grandkids. He's talking about everything and some different things, nice things about Melania Trump and about something else, maybe about business, etc., etc. Nothing about the war, nothing about the attacks of Russia on Ukraine. Nothing about the war of Russia with Ukraine, but about some different nice things. This is appeasement. This is not peace. This is not a way to peace. This is appeasement. So the silence of others, the silence of President Trump, and as we've seen, President Zelenskyy is not calling Trump by name. But of course, this is very painful for President Trump to see. Trump, in his statement, many times he said that Zelenskyy is not helping his country by attacking Putin. And I must say that different representatives of the Trump administration many times have said that, yes, we should not attack Putin, we should not attack him, we should talk to him, we should try to talk to Russian officials, etc., etc. So this is just frustrating. They've been saying, oh, we must talk to them, we must talk to them, and Russia continues to attack, to launch attack, and no talk of ceasefire. Of course, there is no way to talk about ceasefire right now. So President Trump is calling for an end of the war, but his administration, on the other hand, is taking a softer line on Russia than the previous administration, of course. And the American policy has shifted from fully supporting Ukraine towards accepting some kind of Russia's account of the war, just a little bit. But this approach, of course, this is a sharp difference from what we've seen before. This is not a full throttle support of Ukraine that, of course, we've seen under Biden. And now we are seeing that this doesn't work at all. Only military aid worked. And of course, when President Trump blames everything on Biden, he doesn't want to say that Biden's line was probably correct. Biden's actions were probably correct. And after that wonderful 2-hour phone call with Putin, nothing changed. Nothing changed. No 30 days truce that was suggested by the American side that they could, of course, agree to on the phone call. No. Russia fully walked away, entirely walked away from those conversations, from those negotiations. No negotiations on the end of the war that were promised by President Trump on day one of his second presidential term. So this is frustrating. This is so frustrating to see that President Zelenskyy is right. So this is why I think President Trump is writing those words about President Zelenskyy.
The sweet couple, Trump and Putin, what a shame. You mentioned sanctions, Alexandra. Commenting on the latest massive attacks against Ukraine, United States President Donald Trump said that Washington is definitely considering sanctions against Russia, Bloomberg reports. Speaking to reporters in New Jersey, Trump said he was not happy with what Putin is doing and the state of negotiations aimed at a ceasefire in Ukraine. A bill to impose sanctions on Russia introduced by Lindsey Graham has been registered in the Senate. What are its current prospects? What are the views among Republicans and Democrats in Congress regarding how Trump conducts negotiations with Russia and Ukraine and his refusal to impose sanctions on Russia?
Well, first of all, the Lindsey Graham Act, the Sanctioning Russia Act, is the one that probably the United States will move to, let's say. Secretary Rubio told the lawmakers that the administration would continue to push an existing bill that could impose 500% tariffs on buyers of Russian natural resources. Of course, first of all, oil and gas. If there is no progress in the peace deal. And it's been discussed in the Congress for some time now. We've heard about it since the end of April. And this is a very interesting piece of legislation because the thing is that it doesn't start working immediately. It doesn't start at the second it is signed by the president, for example, and it will be signed by the president, most probably, because this Sanctioning Russia Act already has more than 80 co-authors. And in order to override president's veto, they need just 67. And now they have 81, according to Lindsey Graham. So this bill introduces this idea that if Russia acts not in good faith during the negotiations, if it violates any possible peace agreement or expands the war in Ukraine, then the law will come into effect. So what the bill does, what the possible law does, primary and secondary sanctions against Russia, primary sanctions on Russian oil, gas, uranium, etc., 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 and those 500% tariffs on imports from countries that buy Russian energy resources. So in practice, this means China, India, Iran, and all countries that actively trade with Russia. They will face penalties when they try to sell something to the United States. When they try to sell it, they get the 500% tariff. Their imports to the United States will be tariffed for 500%. So even the traditional allies of the United States, even the European Union can suffer. And as one of Lindsey Graham's aides put it, it's time to pick a side. And he's talking about the European Union, even the European Union. But if Russia acts in good faith, if Russia doesn't attack Ukraine, if Russia participates in peace negotiations, if, as President Trump puts it, they need to stop shooting. So if Russia is not shooting, let's say, these tariffs, these sanctions, they are lifted. They won't work. Because this would mean that, yes, Russia is acting in good faith. Okay, while it's acting in good faith, while it's not shooting, the law is lifted. No sanctions, no tariffs, nothing like that. But if Russia doesn't act in good faith, okay, so now we see tariffs, now we will see sanctions. And with this 2/3 supermajority, more than 2/3 supermajority of this bill, most probably it will be signed by the president, because the president would not want to see his veto overridden right now. And we've heard from Lindsey Graham while Marco Rubio was in the Committee on International Relations that past week in Congress. Lindsey Graham said that President Trump called for a ceasefire. Ukraine agreed. Putin is looking for excuses. President Trump said, go to Istanbul and talk. Zelenskyy decided to go. Putin didn't go. Nonetheless, what Marco Rubio described is a process that seems clear. In the coming days, not weeks, Russia will provide us with a document setting out the conditions necessary for a ceasefire, and we will get an idea of how serious their intentions are. Coming back to your first question, maybe they will not need a document. Maybe they will not need this memorandum. Now they are seeing how serious Russia is attacking civil Ukrainian cities. So then coming back to what Lindsey Graham said, I understand that we will want to end this war, but in the coming days we will get some indication of how serious Putin is, and I promise you, there are now more than 80 of us. If the coming days are anything like this last few months, you can count on us to act, because our job is to help the world end this war. So this is what we are hearing from Lindsey Graham. This is what we're hearing from senators, from American politicians. And now adding up to what we are hearing from President Trump. Of course, everyone is frustrated. Everyone is seeing what Putin is doing, what Russia is doing. So maybe this will indicate the change, and not only the change of tone, that we are seeing from President Trump, maybe the change of action by the United States. So this frustration will come into real action. It will be transformed into real action, or at least it seems that now is the right time to do it.
Alexandra, Russia is trying to convince the world that its victory is inevitable. However, analysts believe this to be an illusion, reports the American Institute for the Study of War. It is noted that Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is using massive strikes on Ukrainian cities, aggressive rhetoric, and the West's excessive pessimism about the battlefield situation in Ukraine as a component of multifaceted strategy aimed at undermining Ukrainian morale and convincing the West of Russia's inevitable victory and the futility of continued support for Ukraine. How effective is Russia's current strategy of psychological warfare, including mass strikes and defeatist narratives, in shaping Western public opinion and policymaking regarding Ukraine?
Oh, the psychological warfare is horrific. And the psychological warfare is the one that seems to be somehow working not only for Russian society, not only for Ukrainian society, but also for the European Union. President Putin wants everyone to believe that Russia is winning, Russia is gaining territory, Russia is coming into Ukraine, like into Sumy Oblast, for example. But what actually we are seeing from military specialists, for example, Washington Post is reporting that Russian military power has begun to weaken. And by the end of the year, Moscow will face serious shortages of personnel, of weapons. And this is the opinion, again, coming back to American senior officials and military experts. It's the intelligence. It's not just an idea of, for example, a political analyst or someone. No, it's military experts. It's the people who are following what is happening and getting the information from the inside. It's the intelligence. So Washington Post reports that they believe that now may be the most favorable moment since the beginning of the full-scale invasion to put pressure on Moscow. And in the absence of negotiated settlement or decisive Western assistance, the war will likely continue slowly, to evolve slowly through 2025. And if there will be no pressure put on Moscow, maybe it will go even in favor of Russia, though, according to the US Defense Intelligence Agency, Russia is being weakened day by day. So 10 days ago, this report by the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency was provided to Congress. It's a closed report. We don't know what exactly is there in the report. It was a closed session by Congress, and the director of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency presented it. So they assess that Russia's success, Russia's moving into Ukrainian territory is slowing Russia down, and it will continue and come at a higher and higher cost in personnel and in equipment. So according to their assessment, since February 2022, Russia has lost many combat vehicles and drones, tanks, etc., aircrafts, helicopters, etc., military ships, and not even talking about personnel. And this is something that Russia cannot replace easily. So according to Washington Post, and Washington Post is reporting according to U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, the situation is actually dire right now. But as you've said, psychological warfare, that what is working right now, that what we are seeing from Putin. And Putin is trying to tell everyone that, oh, he's ready to continue the war. And this is what we are seeing reported by many journalists and by many outlets. For example, we've seen it from the Financial Times, for example. They just had big article that is entitled "Don't Expect a Miracle. Ukraine prepares for Russia's summer offensive." And yes, on the one hand, the United States are talking about a possible offensive by Russia that could change the course of the war. But it looks like that this is exactly what Kremlin wants everyone to believe, and they don't want anyone to listen to American intelligence that's been right about the beginning of the full-scale invasion, and that's been right about many other things. But of course, President Putin wants everyone only to hear that Russia is getting ready for an offensive and getting ready to fight, and etc. And no, actually, the situation is very different from what we are seeing and hearing from the propaganda. Ukraine is a force in defense. Ukraine is being supported by the European Union, and maybe we will see now the change in course of the United States. And along the front line that stretches and stretches for 1,000 of kilometers, and even more than 1,000 of kilometers, and even though Moscow is regrouping its troops, but they are extremely weakened with equipment mostly, and they don't have enough equipment. So this psychological warfare takes its toll, of course, on many people. But I think that, first of all, we should listen to American intelligence and American intelligence agencies and military experts that are saying that the situation is quite different from what Russian propaganda is stating.
And it's true, Alexandra. We remember that Turkey's foreign minister is set to travel to Russia on Monday to discuss the situation in Ukraine, following direct talks earlier this month in Istanbul between the two sides. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan will underline to Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov Turkey's interest in achieving a fair and lasting peace in the Russia-Ukraine war, according to state-run news agency Anadolu. Fidan is also said to hold talks with other senior Russian officials, including Deputy President Vladimir Medinsky. So we are awaiting the results of this meeting, hoping it will bring clarity on Turkey's actual role and intentions in the context of Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine. So, Alexandra, it was truly a great pleasure to speak with you again. Thank you so much for this conversation, interesting conversation. Political analyst and European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko was with us today. We thank our YouTube audience for their time, support, and your engagement and feedback also mean a great deal to us. We wish you all the best and see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.